By late 1999, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, or Tony Hawk's Skateboarding, depending on where you lived, redefined the skateboarding genre and kicked off a long-lasting franchise. But around the same time, another skateboarding game had dropped. Foregoing the arcade-like controls of Tony Hawk, this game from a small studio called Z-Axis took a more simulation-based approach, with a steep learning curve and some excellent ideas. That game was Thrasher Presents Skate and Destroy. My name is OneHip, and thanks for clicking on this video. Many of you have asked for a retrospective on this often forgotten game since I started covering the Tony Hawk series, and I'm happy that it all worked out as we go through Rockstar's earlier catalogue, finally landing on this one. Was Skate and Destroy a brilliant sim overshadowed by its flashier rival, or did it bail on its first run and end up in the Hall of Meat? This is Thrasher Presents Skate and Destroy. Let's go! Thrasher magazine, the premier skateboarding publication, released its first issue in January 1981, and the magazine is still in circulation, albeit mostly in online form. Famous segments include Skater of the Year, awarded since 1990 to many skateboarding legends, including Tony Hawk, John Cardiel, Chris Cole, and Danny Way, as well as Burnout, Double Rock, Skate Line, and Hall of Meat, the latter featuring video segments of skaters injuring themselves when attempting a trick. By the late 90s, skateboarding was experiencing a cultural revival, with a shift towards street skating. This was coupled with the rise of hip-hop and punk influences on style and music, as well as a rebellious DIY ethos that surrounded the subculture. And video games were starting to reflect that. In order to leverage its brand influence within skate culture, Thrasher partnered with Rockstar and developer Z-Axis to sponsor their upcoming skateboarding game. Years later, Thrasher would appear again in the Skate series, with its infamous Hall of Meat mode featured in the first 4 games. Yes, this includes Skate It. Unlike other skateboarding games that leaned more towards arcade-style tricks or racing hybrids, Skate and Destroy aimed for authenticity. It was the first skateboarding simulator, with a steep learning curve driven by unconventional controls and grounded physics. I'll touch on these throughout the video. Thrasher Presents Skate and Destroy was released on PlayStation in September 1999 across Europe and North America, and in March 2000 in Japan under the name Thrasher Skate. It received above-average reviews, with praise given to its technical mechanics, old-school hip-hop soundtrack, and inclusion of ragdoll physics, which was almost unheard of in a game at that time. Criticism went to its graphics and less pick-up-and-play nature compared to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. While Tony Hawk was more accessible to casual players, Skate and Destroy captured the rawness of skate culture. You pick one of 6 skaters, each with unique stats, and travel across the US and Europe to become a pro skater and land on the cover of Thrasher magazine. The gameplay can feel awkward at first, especially if your first skate game was a Tony Hawk one, but once you get the hang of it, it's genuinely rewarding. For my playthrough, I picked Cyrus as my skater, as he had the most balanced stats, which helps first-time players like myself. I also changed his name, which is optional. The default controls are unlike any other skateboarding game you might have played. Flip tricks use triangle, spins and grabs are on circle, ollies on square, and pushing and grinding on X. You can perform rotational tricks, like a 360 kickflip or 180 indie grab, by holding triangle and circle together, or by just holding circle and a directional button, respectively. Holding L1 with square lets you do nollies, and holding it while flipping lets you do nollie tricks, while R1 handles backside variants. L2 and R2 let you roll your body mid-air or on rails, or trigger a bail manually, which never stops being hilarious. Unlike most skate games, you don't need to ollie before every trick. Pressing the button alone is enough. You can adjust your center of gravity with the D-pad, and yes, landing from too big of a drop will slam you straight into the pavement most of the time. Tricks like wall rides and manuals require 3-button combinations, and while I found wall rides to be straightforward, manuals were tough to pull off consistently. You unlock more tricks, including lip tricks like hand plants, as you progress through the campaign. The controls took a bit for me to get used to, and I was quite frustrated at first, but once I figured it out, pulling off combos was incredibly satisfying. If you give it a bit of time, you'll have fun with the game, despite its jank in parts. I found street skating tricks like grinds and flips to be very forgiving, and you're able to snap onto grindable assets quite easily, and flips don't require mid-air adjustments to land too often. Vert and grab tricks are more difficult to pull off, especially as spins and grabs share the same button. But it wasn't a big deal, as I stuck to doing mostly grinds and flips. You can receive bonus points by leaping over or transferring to certain obstacles and levels. These aren't called gaps in the game, but they pretty much are. As well as for big air, pulling tricks in risky situations such as on an angle or over water, and chaining numerous tricks together. You can also receive bonus points for sick or wicked high-scoring combos. Unlike Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Thrasher has no objectives beyond hitting a target score within a 2-minute timer. Interestingly, the timer doesn't start until you trigger it, letting you practice freely beforehand. It's a nice blend of free skate and single session. Once you've met the target, you must find an exit to end your run. Exits can also be used to end your run before the timer runs out if you wish to register your target score, try again, or change levels. You don't have to find the exit during competition levels, which I'll talk about in the next part of this video. There are also high scores for you to beat if you wish to do so. You also have a health meter, which can deplete with damage received from bales or things like toxic sludge or passing vehicles. Running out of health ends your run, a mechanic Z-axis would revisit in later games. You can also view a replay of your previous run and adjust the camera angle, which is nice. Skate and Destroy's main aim is to reach the level score target and make it to the exit before you're chased by police, muggers, or guard dogs, who appear at the end of your timed run. When you're chased, the camera shifts to the perspective of the chaser, which is very similar to how the camera pans out when you're chased by security in Skate 1 and 2. You can either lose them and the run ends, or get busted or caught, which also ends your run. And supposedly, if you outrun a cop long enough, they suffer a heart attack. I didn't experience this myself, but it's a wild detail that I read. Visually, the game leaves a lot to be desired, and other games at the time like Pro Skater look much better even though they were on the same console. It wasn't a deal breaker for me, of course, as the rewarding gameplay more than made up for it. Many of the game's levels are based on real-world locations, and while I appreciated the effort to include them, the level quality overall is hit and miss. Thanks for still being here with me. The channel recently reached 3,000 subscribers, so thanks so much for your support and helping me get to this milestone. If you wish to see more retrospectives like this one, as well as gaming video essays, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on new videos. Let's take a look at Skate and Destroy's level design. Skate and Destroy offers 12 levels of open and interactive terrain across 4 districts. You start in Hometown with a single level called Industrial, a tutorial level of sorts with a low target score. You then head to New York, LA, and San Francisco, each with 3 levels. The third level in these districts is a competition level free of chasers, with only a score target to beat and no exit required, even though they're available to use. The final district, International, takes you to London and Germany, the latter hosting the final competition that earns you Pro Skater status if you win. Completing each district unlocks a short skate compilation video, with the last one being longer and a very satisfying finale. If you manage to complete the game on expert difficulty, you'll land on the cover of Thrasher magazine. I didn't go for this in my playthrough, but it's something I'd like to attempt down the track. Real-world skating spots like New York's Brooklyn Banks, LA's Venice Beach Pavilion, and San Francisco's China Banks all feature as their own levels, which adds to Skate and Destroy's authenticity. There's a nice mix of rails, benches, and ramps scattered throughout, giving each map plenty of opportunities for creative lines. Levels like Brooklyn Banks and Subway, also in New York, were standouts for me. They flowed nicely, had great layout variety, and they just felt good to skate in. On the other hand, LA River was easily the weakest. Once you drop into the ditch, getting back up is a chore, especially with the toxic sludge hazard that I mentioned earlier. Also, evading the cops there is frustrating, and the level lacks flow entirely. It was a slog to beat, but it was satisfying once I did. Overall, the level design is a mixed bag, mostly average with a few highlights. What made them stand out more though, is the music assigned to each one. Featuring iconic old school hip hop artists, the soundtrack adds a ton of personality and really helps capture the feeling of late 90s skate culture. One of Skate and Destroy's strongest elements is its soundtrack, a mostly old-school hip-hop lineup that gives each level its own personality and perfectly captures the era's vibe. Standouts for me include Rapper's Delight by Sugar Hill Gang, King of Rock by Run DMC, which also plays in the main menu, and Rebel Without a Pause by Public Enemy, the latter also appearing in GTA San Andreas. Freestyle Noise by Freestylers plays in the Germany competition, leaning more electronic but still grounded in hip-hop influences. And like other Z-Axis games, you can change the tracks in the level's options menu, or turn them off entirely. Despite being a small playlist, I really enjoyed listening to it, with many of the songs I already knew and some that I discovered for the first time, and they all fit the game's raw energy perfectly. Outside the game's main skate mode, there's also a multiplayer mode, but as I only had one controller connected, I wasn't able to access that section. However, multiplayer modes include Sessions, Nickelbag, and Horse, among others, with many of them being rebranded versions of those in Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX, another Z-Axis game that I've covered on the channel previously. You can adjust game options like camera angle, difficulty, and vibration, as well as adjust audio, view high scores, adjust your controls, change language, and view the game's credits. While Skate and Destroy would ultimately be overshadowed by Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, it laid the groundwork for skateboarding simulation, a concept that wouldn't truly resurface until years later. Despite its rough edges, Thrasher Presents Skate and Destroy was a bold attempt to capture the feeling of skateboarding before the technology, and maybe even the audience, was ready for it. Its simulation-style controls, grounded physics, and unfiltered depiction of skate culture were years ahead of what most players expected at the turn of the millennium. When compared to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, it's easy to see why Skate and Destroy was overshadowed, as the game demanded a lot from the player, like patience, precision, and time to master, while Tony Hawk was instant fun. But in hindsight, Skate and Destroy laid the groundwork for an entirely different branch of skateboarding games, one focused on realism and flow. The DNA of what Z-Axis built here can be felt years later in EA's Skate series, which redefined what a skate sim could be through its revolutionary analog stick control and grounded setting. And more recently, games like Session and Skater XL have pushed that philosophy even further, embracing the learning curve and celebrating the raw authenticity that Skate and Destroy hinted at decades earlier. It may not have sold millions of copies or become a household name, but Thrasher Presents Skate and Destroy deserves recognition as one of the earliest games to truly respect skateboarding as an expressive, technical craft. Its influence rippled quietly but unmistakably through the games that followed decades later. Thanks for watching. What are your memories of this game? Did you take time to learn the mechanics or drop it early on? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on upcoming content. And while I'm not able to buy Thrasher Presents Skate and Destroy for PC, as it was a PlayStation exclusive, I can still buy other PC games from Fanatical. They offer officially licensed Steam keys, often with serious discounts. So if you're planning to grab your next PC game or bundle, consider using my affiliate link in the description. It doesn't cost anything extra, but it directly supports the channel so I can keep making videos like this. Thanks for your support. Also, thank you to my current channel members for supporting me further. There are links to this and my Ko-fi donation page in the video description. My name is OneHip, and you have a good one. Bye!